Oh, hello from the 21st century. I am your Captain Myrriah Gossett, who is for sure not sending passive aggressive heads in the mail anytime soon. With me on the view screen, we have
Clyde Haynes, and I just got to say, I am all for an awkward reunion embrace. Riker be damned.
And your pissed off positronic security system falls to touch it. Almost.
hello, Clyde and Paul. You almost got it, guys. Welcome.
Almost.
Welcome to Star Trek Discovery Pod. We discuss all things new in classic Trek. Sometimes we're smart, sometimes we're funny. To be seen for this episode. Tonight, we are reviewing and discussing the 8th episode of the final season of Star Trek Picard, entitled Surrender. Once again, directed by Deborah Camp Myrriah and written by Matt Okumara. Yes. Okay. I was like, I practiced. I did.
Not enough.
Not enough. So sorry. But Paul, can you tell people how they can find or share this podcast with their friends and fellow Trekkies?
Hey everyone, we are on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. All links are at StarTrekPod.co. And if you are so inclined and you really enjoy our episodes, for $2, you can help us and to provide such amazing content, and apparently maybe help me get some speech lessons so I don't see. I'm screwing up already. It's too much. Anyway, $2 per episode at patreon.com/StarTrekPod.
You can do it. Clyde, if folks are watching us live tonight on YouTube, how can they interact with us in the chat?
Morse code. Just tap out what you want us to know. No, if you're watching us live, then we urge you, insist that if you want to talk to us, just type capital P, capital O, capital D, capital Pod in the chat, and we will take a look at your comment, your question, your theories, your thoughts. And in that special time of the show, you want to let us know what your initial thoughts about the show were, just type in capital H, capital F, capital HF in the chat, and we will take a look at your wrap-up thoughts, notions, and overall assumptions.
Indeed, we shall do that because it is logical to do so. I think it is time for the next logical thing for us to do, and that is time for some hot breaks. Gotta do the hot freaks. Paul, what did you think about this episode?
I thought the episode was very satisfying. I found it very satisfying. I think I found it satisfying the moment I realized, oh, Amanda Plummer was in Pulp Fiction. I was like, oh, it was like when she was smoking and talking. I was like, oh, that's Honey Bunny. So yeah, it took me a little too much time. I thought that it wrapped up pretty well. I think we were wondering where Worf and Ralphie was, and there they were. So I thought that was great. I can poke things at things, and I will as we continue. But other than that, I was overall satisfied.
Clyde, thoughts?
So I don't understand what's going on exactly with Jack, and I'm sure there's a Myrriah prediction theory in it for us later. But I think we got a moment here that we wanted from day one. And that was the cast that we know and love all sitting around a ready room table. That was the moment where I was like, oh, okay. Now I understand that deep down in my heart, what I really wanted was a TNG reboot from day one. And now I'm getting it. So Picard aside, everyone's here, right? Minus, Wesley Crusher. But we've got the whole gang is back together, including Data, which I was not expecting. I have to admit, I wasn't quite expecting it. But what would a Star Trek franchise be without Brent Spiner somewhere? So all in all, I thought we've got some fight scenes, we got some external shots of the ship, we have some resolution. I thought it was good. I'm just not quite sure where we're going.
Yeah, I think I'm in like a lukewarm cup of tea for this episode for me. It's definitely not been my like favorite, but there were scenes that I really enjoy. I think Worf and Rafi continue to have my favorite scenes in the show since they've gotten together. I think they have some really fun on-screen dynamics and they get to do a lot of the really fun stuff on screen. I'm sad to see the end of Vadic. I really thought she was a really great villain, and I thought there was some really great moments and performances by Amanda Plummer in this episode. And I'm ready for a reveal. I cannot tell you how much I yelled at my screen when the episode ended.
Wait, is Vadic dead?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, but when the T-1000 gets broken up to a bunch of pieces, the T-1000 isn't dead.
Well, here's my thing is I mean, it's kind of it's really early for this, but as we know, I saw her coming in on screen. It is peanut hamper time. I don't know if you saw, there was a very small thing flying. I'm just kidding. But, when things explode in space, I have full faith that Peanut Hamper is there to collect the trash. So,
Yeah.
In that thought, though, when she's out in space and she's frozen, I was like, okay, if you have a gelatinous life form.
Well, it's been proven that they can exist in space.
But freezing was like, cool. Then when she hit the ship and she get into a 1,000 little pieces, it was like, okay, also cool. But then the ship blew up.
Yeah.
Then therefore heating up those pieces. And then I was like, not so sure about this now.
Yeah, I was like, they're either trying to tell us there's a possibility or no possibility, right? That it could come back.
Yes.
But I feel like the main core of this episode, which is interesting, it's not where I thought we were going to spend a lot of time, but we did, was Data and Lore having their Mind Palace showdown. Very a la Lower Decks when we had Eugene Cordero's character. Rutherford. I was like, it's coming. Right. Rutherford. Rutherford had to face off against his former self.
Old Rutherford. Versus...
Yes. Rutherford v. Rutherford. So yeah, what did y'all think? I don't have as much emotional attachment to Data and or Lore as I think a lot of other folks do. I know he is quite a beloved character, but that was not like the Star Trek. I grew up watching Voyager. I'd only ever come in and out of TNG, so I don't really have that same kind of like, I think, emotional attachment to that character. So I wanted to see what y'all thought about those scenes in particular.
So, like, for an adolescent sci-fi nerd, Data is the coolest android ever. I mean, look, I'll out myself. I grew up reading like the not quite human fiction books, like juvenile fiction, which are all about teenage boy robots. So I like androids. So this whole idea, this motif of wanting to be human as an android, so you talk about beloved. Yes, there's a certain attachment that I had to Data. And again, as we all know, that I say all the time, my favorite character is Geordi LaForge. If you ask Geordi who his best friend is, it is Data. Yeah. So there is a certain kind of attachment. So for me, the fact that he's not dead, I did think that when we watched Picard last season and Data died, I felt like it just was like, why? And so to bring him back, while I wasn't expecting it, I enjoyed it. And if you brought the crew back together, it would have felt for me completely empty not having Data there when we've seen him so much in the Picard series, either as an old Data or as a Q. Yeah, like we've seen him so much. To not have him in this like forum would have felt wrong to me. So I did really enjoy having him back.
Yeah, and it is interesting that this is sort of like the most human Data we could possibly have. And I did really enjoy seeing Data and Geordi having their like friendship reconnection moment. And I thought LeVar Burton, I mean, is LeVar Burton and just like crushes all of those like kind of really does a great job of balancing having to provide both emotion and then also like a bunch of Star Trek technobabble, you know, within a lot of these same scenes, which I know can be kind of difficult to do. But I also appreciate that they've been giving the younger LaForge kids a lot of the technobabble lines. And I was like, oh, it is generational. Look how cute this is. Paul, what did you think of the death of your favorite character?
Well, you know, like heroes need to die well, and I think like we saw here how heroic Lore was. He knew that Vatic and the gang were going to be a problem. He goes like, the only way that I can really solve this problem if I can defeat my lesser brother Data, and as such I'll give him the best of me, you know, and I will subsume myself into him. And then, you know, there's no better hero. Like, you know, it's actually Lore season 3.
And that is a Paul take.
Strong Paul take.
Strong Paul take.
I mean, it's you know, like it's one of those things where I'm of two minds. Like, I of course like go, yes, good for Data. He's the good guy. Blah 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 blah. But you know, like if I were to be really like, you know, just like devil's advocate about it, like here's Lore with all his damage, and like Data set the trap for him that preys on his damage, and then poof.
Yep.
I mean, and I don't know what to say to that. And like, I think my favorite line that Lore says is like, Data got everything, I got nothing. And you know, and that's true. I mean, like, to be fair though, like he did feed his community to a snowflake crystal, but like, you know, anyway, we'll just agree to disagree and we'll move on. Like,
Okay.
it's, you know, it's not like we agree about peanut hamper, and that's the more important thing.
Exactly. The most important aspect of our friendship, truly. The other kind of interesting two-hander scenes in this episode is with Troy and Riker when they are in their on the Shrike imprisoned on the Shrike, and we get sort of the emotional backstory of what's been going on in their marriage and since the loss of their son. And I did think it was interesting to get to see how a Betazoid kind of has to deal with not only their own grief, but the grief of everyone around them. And in the Ready Room this week, they had kind of a package about the Troy and Riker relationship. And, you know, it included some interviews, and Marina de Certes kind of made the point of like, you know, it's kind of remarkable that after the loss of child that they're still together, that's something that a lot of times will break up a lot of relationships and marriages. And so, you know, you got to kind of see how they were processing it. And, you know, they made quite a few leaps, I think, in that conversation. But I guess if you're just stuck in a cell with nothing else to do but to talk out your problems with, and one of you is a counselor, it might end up there. But what did y'all think of this reunion that we finally kind of fully got on screen this season between Troy and Riker?
Well, this was one of a handful of my favorite scenes for me. And that's because, you know, again, we tend to think of certain relationships and certain characters as almost perfect and model-esque, right? And what we got was a realness. Now, look, you guys have been in some serious relationships, long-term relationships. Marriages are hard. And I feel like that is not always portrayed well on television, if at all. And I think that's what we got here. We got this idea that the Riker-Troy relationship was no fairy tale, but they did find a way to reconcile. That was hopeful and encouraging and what I want out of my Trek. And it brought a certain level of realness. And so I did appreciate that scene quite a bit.
Yeah. Paul, what did you think of the reunion?
Like, I thought it was fine and great and acting well and dialogue was great. Like, good at sex, bad at pizza. I thought that was a great line. Uh, uh, what I was curious was, like, in season one, like, the kid had already died.
Hmm.
So, like, were they going through all this in season one and we just didn't see? Because it's always that thing where, like, Troy told me to go away. I go, like, well, like, that was like 2 years ago. Like, we saw you. Like, like, how long ago had your kid died? I thought it was a while ago. I didn't realize it was sooner. So, like, it seems like the grief is. I don't know the timeline.
Well,
So that's my.
I do wonder. So they have revealed at this point that their daughter is at early acceptance at the academy. So I wonder
Mhm,
if it's that rearing of the head of an empty nest and like what
mhm.
happens when there's
Sure.
no longer, parenting having to happen. I would
Gotcha.
imagine that's when that can kind of happen. But again, we didn't actually see that on screen, so it is kind of having to infer a few things to your
Mhm.
point, Paul.
Yeah.
But I do think it is like interesting to see how like grief doesn't just go away, right? So it's like them having to kind
No,
of process it.
you have to eat it with chocolate away. Deanna Troy style.
Hmm.
Well, I also, to be honest with you, it makes me want to go back and watch old Picard
Mm.
because, I remember a while back I had a friend and, we went over to their house for like a party or something, and everything seemed great. Our kids played together. It was all wonderful. And then a few months later, he told me that his divorce was final, and I was like, well, wait, well, hold on, man. I was just at your house a couple months ago.
Hmm.
Like, your divorce being final, that's not something that just happened, right? And so what I kind of learned through that experience is that there's a lot of times that you don't know what's going on with people on the surface. And it makes me want to go back and look and go, were there signs? Did
Hmm.
we see distance? Like, did we just ignore it? Like, was it sophisticated that they were setting the story up in such a way in advance that we just all like assume that everything was perfect because this was Roy? This was, I was gonna say Roy. This was Troy and Riker.
Hmm.
And so I kind of want to go back. I don't know that I will, but I was been thinking about that all day. There's a lot of TV out there, man. I don't know if
There's
I'm
a lot.
gonna. I
There's a
gotta
lot
go
of TV.
find it.
There's a lot of TV. That's right.
There's a lot. Yeah, and I think one of my favorite scenes though was when Worf comes in, because I don't know if we've seen like all three of them together since like anyway, we haven't seen all three of them together in a very long time, and I found that
Sure.
scene to be very both like comical and funny and interesting. um and I just think Worf has the best lines of the whole series.
Agreed.
I think like, do knives work on these changelings? I mean,
I
that's
mean, it
what
seems to injure them, but I've noticed that Worf always is like phasering
it's
them
yeah,
afterwards.
yeah.
It's like the
Hmm.
takeout and then the double tap. Like in a
Well,
zombie movie,
well,
you
like,
always have to have a double tap.
so, like, and I was wondering about that because, like, for me, if I were Worf, I would just phaser him in the back and be done with it. Like, why'd you guys stab him first?
Because it's more fun that way.
Apparently, so he's not as evolved as he's
It's
saying that to Troy. That
Well, it could also just be maybe it's a little bit more quiet to take people out that way and then to go back through. Who knows? But
then he fires it anyway.
yeah,
So
I don't know.
it's just one of those things where, like, stabby stab, burn. Like,
Yeah,
it's
stab,
like,
stab, pew, pew.
yeah, like, and I feel like, yeah, that has been one of my pet
I mean, it
peeves.
works.
It works, like, when it needs to, and when plot for plot, like, like last episode, they're like, phaser. Oh, this one disintegrates. This one just makes a little hole. This one makes an ineffectual little hole. Like,
Maybe
like,
you have to hit them in a very particular place for it to sin.
yeah, maybe
Yes.
the Worf knows
Or it could
exactly.
Like
have been I
zombies,
didn't want
there's
to
a
hit a
place you gotta hit them.
phaser and accidentally hit my friends who are also in the same space in case this guy moves.
I'm gonna tell you, if Worf is standing behind someone and then enough to stab him, and they're worried about shooting his friend, he's a bad shot.
Maybe that's why he prefers the sword. He knows
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
not a good shot.
Fair.
Also, I would feel like a Klingon is probably like, I need to spill blood today, you know?
Yeah, no. I guess it's a changeling blood. It is.
I also wanted to talk about, I felt like Jack was truly my audience surrogate this episode, where
Mhm.
he's just like, just let me go to the bridge, because I just also kept yelling that, because I was like,
Yep.
between him and Seven and Shaw, I feel like they could take all of them out. Like, I feel like I wanted to see like a battle on the bridge with those
Sure.
three just like kicking some serious butt. Like, it would have made my day, mostly
Yeah, no.
because I feel like Seven is being a little underutilized this season, and it makes me sad. But
You
Well,
think?
I feel like
You go,
she's
Clyde.
driving a lot of plot and some great emotional beats, but she is such a kick-ass character. Like, and to not see that happening, I get sad about it.
Yeah, I think it's tricky because the truth is you got a lot of people on set, right? Like there's a lot of people that you're trying to service.
Mhm.
And I don't know that we found the right balance yet, because you're right. I think you mentioned Seven. One of the questions that I've been thinking about all day is,
More
now
Shaw.
that more shot. Well, actually a little bit, but really thinking about in terms of Vedic, did we get enough?
Mm.
Because again, amazing on screen, like so great. But part of me was asking, did I get enough of the bad guy? And especially now that she's gone, I'm kind of like, I think I could have got a little more. I think I would have been happy with a little bit more.
Yeah, it stinks that we didn't get at least like I don't know, like a better interrogation scene once she knew she was cornered and the jig was up, but we kind of got that last episode. I don't know. It's going to really depend on how this whole plane really lands for me to decide how I kind of feel about Vedic by the end of all this, but she truly had the best send off, like death line with fuck solids. Like, that was fucking solids was like an incredible last line to give her. So I thought that was pretty amazing way to send that character off. But I'm trying to think that this episode had like a lot happen and not a lot happen. When I'm like looking at my notes, right? Like, it was kind of the ticking clock of like, we're putting all these pieces together. The whole crew is finally together. What was it like for y'all to see that crew around that table again?
Like for me, I didn't even notice it.
Interesting.
Like I know.
Even with the swell of the music.
Yeah, I know. It was one of those things where, but it's like, in some ways, like it's like you haven't seen someone that you've known for ages, and you're just sitting hanging out, and like you don't realize that time hasn't passed. So like like I didn't miss it because in some ways it's always in the back of my head. I'm always in the ready room, or the stat the not yeah. So I thought it was. I didn't realize that. Oh, I really didn't realize that all of them were staying together. Like I didn't realize that Shaw and Seven weren't there. They were just talking like, oh yeah, this is what it is. So yeah.
So that's an interesting point, because I have to admit that didn't dawn on me. Like, it didn't dawn on me like, oh, why are they all together? Where is Seven and Shaw? Right? Like, I guess I was so caught up in the nostalgia of one, and I thought, man, this seems like a much smaller table than the table of the Enterprise. Because I felt like the Enterprise ready room, you could get all of them, and they still had seats for guests, right? Like the occasional, like the occasional Wesley or some ambassador, like they could get everybody on the table. You'd be like, Miles, why are you in here? Shouldn't you be managing the transporter? So it is. I guess that's interesting. Now you got me really thinking, like, why not? Because if you think about it, where we're at, it's their ship.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I mean, I'm assuming they are probably taking a moment to mourn the loss of their crew member, who we did lose, Lieutenant Tavine this episode, our Vulcan on the bridge. And I would imagine they're taking a moment. Although I saw some very scandalous fan art of what someone thought Seven and Rafi were up to on Twitter. And I was like, I mean, I would be happy with that too. It's on my likes on Twitter if you all want to find it.
Wow.
And cut to Shaw just eating alone.
A blue steak eating alone.
No
Seven
one like
and Rafi having a moment.
No one likes me. I'm the voice of reason. No one likes the voice of reason.
Myrriah, I'm guessing if you're encouraging people to take a look at that they shouldn't do that while they're at work.
I mean, it's not that salacious. It would be fine. Maybe not in front of a coworker, but it wouldn't get you in that much trouble.
Okay.
I mean, Star Trek fan art, we all know where it can go.
Yes. Yes, we do know. These are Star Trek fans. Like the extremes are where they're at the happiest.
Yes,
so
it's true. I did love, and I think Chupi made this point somewhere in the chat. I'll try to find the comment, but essentially Data and Lore and that whole situation, truly a cat saved a ship because Spot was the memory that broke Lore, which I thought was kind of a fun moment. the like meow echoing through the ship was cute. We also got to see a couple of pretty big Easter eggs in those memories that Data was passing along to Lore. And I had seen some talk about, and now it's going to slip my mind. So what did y'all think about those memories as they were being passed between each other?
Well, you got the Sherlock Holmes stuff. You have
a little too much of it, I thought, but yeah.
You have Data's booty call. In Tasha Yar. Like, did they hook up more often than once?
I just remember the once. He did have other relationships, though.
Did he?
Yeah.
With who?
There was a woman who was grieving or something that was like all into him for a second, and then
she broke up. But did they hook up? Because they explicitly hooked up,
Yes, but everybody was everybody was intoxicated, or she was intoxicated.
Yeah, they had the crazy water. They had the deck of cards, which is it's where Data learned to bluff. And they had Spot, but am I missing something?
No, so I wanted to talk about Tasha Yar, and there are some people chatting online about, is it possible that Armis is the thing calling for Jack?
Wow.
I've seen a lot of that. Someone's gonna have to explain to me how that would translate.
I also don't know how that would translate, but I thought it was interesting, especially after we got the Tasha Yar little Easter egg this episode.
Let's take a step back. So because I haven't seen that, but Armis is old,
because there's so there's been a couple of drops, and this will all lead to the eventual deep dive that I've been doing in my crazy theory that I have that does not have to do with Armis, but we know it's an ancient voice that's fading. We also had Vadic say to Seven, it's good that you're here to witness this, when talking about Jack's powers. So that's another little clue that we kind of can toss out there. And then it's a darkness upon Jack.
Sure. And Picard, Picard was not, was the last person to see Armis, and so there's bones to pick with Picard. Let's see, what else would there be?
We also got a small clip of Armis in Lower Decks.
Yeah. So it's on the mind.
It's on the mind.
What else can we say about it? Armis has the same diction as the hand face person, right? Like he talks like that. It's not bad.
Okay.
And he's gooey.
He is gooey, not a typical solid, right?
So he could theoretically link with the other.
That feels like a deep cut. It feels like, man, you're digging in deep. You're bringing back Armis. That feels like a deep cut.
Yeah. Okay. So are you all ready for this crazy Myrriah prediction time?
I'm always game for Myrriah prediction. Like, bring it.
All right. So it has been an hashtag spoiler alert. I'm going to talk about some things that I've found. And none of it is confirmed. A lot of it's on like beta sites and like not actual spoilers for anything. I have not seen the last 2 episodes of this show. They have not released that to us. So all of this is just my crazy ramblings. So here we go. So next week's episode, it has been revealed, is entitled Vox. VOX. So when you look that up, you can find there's an Enterprise episode that has to do with a being that has some capabilities. I think that is just a red herring to throw us off the scent, because Vox was also in a character in the Shatnerverse books, in which here is the synopsis. So Vox was a 24th century Romulan who had been assimilated by the Borg to serve as a speaker to the Romulan Empire. Then some history about that. But the book, essentially, the core plan of this book is the Borg and this Romulan steal Kirk's body to use as a weapon against the Federation. And they essentially are trying to have Kirk kill Picard.
Like the book's called The Return, right?
Yeah, The Return. So the plot of The Return has some very interesting similarities to the plot of this season, which just, I think, continues to potentially point that it is the Borg on the other side of this because of Picard's Locutus.
So that is like a deep cut. Like that is
it's not even on memory alpha, it's on memory beta.
Yeah. That's deep.
So basically you take a deep cut and then you go to the deepest part and you take another cut. That's what...
Yeah. So
it's like a line in a deep cut, like that's a phrase. It's like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, but this is what I think. I think they're gonna just like name drop and be like, oh, do you remember that Vox who was, the Romulan who tried to take me out using Kirk's body? I was like, they could just slide that into canon.
I don't know, like
because it all happens right after Genesis.
So here's the thing, like Kirk's body is in Datestrom.
Correct.
Right now. So like I don't maybe. I mean,
and it's interesting that they put that in as an Easter egg, that was one of the Easter eggs that was there.
I like where you're going, Myrriah, because something, the line about it's so fitting that you're here. The truth of this is, like, we've talked about, is it this, is it that, is it this? And I've seen people in the chat say Vedic is the best villain since Khan. And all that might be interesting, but from a Star Trek standpoint, the greatest villain ever is the Borg. Yeah. And so I have felt like there's definitely, and with Seven being so prominent, and even in the premiere episode, all this talk about, like, is she Seven? Is she, Commander Hansen? And again, that came up today, which was weird, right? That didn't feel like it fit because he's already called her Seven. Yeah. Now he called her Lieutenant Hansen, and she's got to reaffirm that her name is 7 of 9. I definitely think that there's a Borg tie-in here.
I think also it's potentially that, Vadic's handler is like our Vox of this series, which is a changeling who has been assimilated by the Borg that is trying to find a way to take down the Federation. And as they stated early on in the series, while we have like the fun Borg now with Dr. Girardi, there's also a fraction that are still like, no, take down the Federation. And then Chupi coming in with the Latin says Locutus is the past particle of the Latin word locor, to speak. Officially it means spoken, which is also the translation of Vox.
There are times where I feel like I am not smart enough to be a Star Trek fan. You guys are amazing. Yes.
So I think because the Borg and the guilt of Locutus still haunts Picard, and I think that would explain why they took that part of his brain, because I wonder if they're like, oh, Jack has these abilities because he is a descendant of a de-Borgified human. And so it's like if they can then take those abilities, which the Borg love to do, and then the Borg changelings have the ability to not only look like people, but to infiltrate their minds as well, like unstoppable, right? An unstoppable villain.
Let's take a step back. Let's say you are the person behind the red door.
Yeah.
Why do you want Jack?
Well, I think whatever's behind the red door is trying to tell Jack what he is, and he's afraid to look behind the red door. I don't think the red door is necessarily.
Well, let me put it a different way. Like, we're assuming that the Federation Day is where they're going to destroy Starfleet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in 36 hours or so, they're going to destroy Starfleet at Federation Day. Mm-hmm. And like, now that we see that Jack has mind powers, could it be that, they want to just take those powers and control all of Starfleet?
Right.
Like, it's like a
they wouldn't even have to destroy it. The infrastructure would be there. They would just have all of the power, right?
If Jack just inhabits everyone,
mm-hmm.
At once, and then so and that does seem pretty Borgy.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be a little disappointed if it's the Borg because it's a little obvious in that way. I'm hoping it's something different, but if I had to guess why they need Jack, that seems like the most logical thing about it.
So here's something that I haven't been willing to say, but Nicole has said something that has sparked me. So I've been thinking this for a little bit. So Nicole says, didn't Picard have a door in his mind that he was scared to look behind also? Wasn't this about his mom? Was it like Picard's mom was locked away?
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if this is something to do with that.
Well, I mean, basically Picard's mom, the season 2, right? Basically his mom was bipolar or whatever the 22nd century equivalent of that is. She was locked in a room for her own good, which seems rather barbaric for the 20 whatever century. Picard lets her out, and then she hangs herself, and he's always felt guilty ever since, until Q makes him face that moment, right? That's so basically the door is the partition for your trauma, right? You just can't go behind that. So is the red door some kind of trauma that Jack is not facing? Maybe I will say this, and this could be a Paul theory.
Ready?
Paul theory. Yeah, let's do it. It's
you
a little
got a Paul
underwhelming.
theory.
It's a little underwhelming, but yeah, okay. It's not like Myrriah prediction. That seems
because mine has all caps. Yeah,
Okay. No. It's cool. It's fine. It's just a Paul theory. So, in this last episode, there were two things that really stuck out to me as far one is when Troy goes, "Have you seen a red door?" And I'm like, "Bitch, how do you know about my door?" She's not a telepath. What the hell? What the hell's up with that? And then they had this shot of her just talking to Jack, and I'm like, oh, is this Troy or is this a changeling?
Oh, interesting.
Because
that is interesting.
I don't know. If Troy is a changeling right now, it would be such a move. It'd be such a move.
Be. I don't know if they would at this point, especially after we've had so many of their kind of emotional conversations with Riker, if they could truly pull that off.
What did she really say?
I mean, she talked about their kid extensively.
Yeah.
Like you were too sad. I could do that. You were so sad. And then Riker's the one who said, you pushed your powers into me. Bad. I'm just saying, I don't know if it's correct. I'm just saying, these two things were going, that seems a little odd. How do you know about the red door? Has Jack really talked about anyone about that? I don't know.
It's a good point. I mean, there are a couple things that I'm toying with in my mind as well. When I thought about that scene, the first thing that jumped out of my mind is this isn't safe.
I know, me too. I thought the same thing.
Jack, his eyes go red and he accidentally kills people. So be like, I don't know what happened. I don't know. Like.
I mean,
so
I wonder if Troy can see it because Jack can make people, he can also inhabit. They're essentially like their brains can just talk to each other fully,
Maybe, but she's asking at that point. She's going,
yeah.
Have you seen a red door? As opposed to like, oh, I see you see a red door. Like it might just be a writing thing. It might be nothing, but like it was just something that
maybe he explained it to what he's been seeing to his mom, and Crusher was like, here's the lowdown before you go talk.
If I have to agree with some of our people in the chat. If Troy is a changeling, I'm gonna be mad. Yeah. Like I'm gonna be pretty heated.
I don't know. Like you weren't there when were you there when like Bashir was a changeling?
I mean, it didn't evoke the same thing, but that does remind me. The other thing that I was thinking about, like Paul, I love what you said earlier about trauma and the red door being like this blockage to trauma. And that made me think of Beverly really talking about how he had these nightmares when he was young.
Sure.
What if when he was young, he encountered a changeling that melded with him, and that's why he's having these issues, right?
But it is interesting that it's like coming in phases, right? Like it seems to be getting worse. His powers seem to be coming into a head, right? Like this doesn't seem like something that he's had the ability to do his entire life. It's like, oh yeah, I've had some nightmares and like I've always felt different. He's always said I've felt different, but there's never been like, I think, to this capacity of what's been going on before now.
Yeah, no, I mean like if it is the Borg, the simplest explanation is like he's a little Borg because of his time with Lokitas, because his dad's it got passed along, and when he was a kid, he couldn't sleep because the Borg were talking to him, as they do, and
the collective whispers, yes.
And then eventually, like he's able to block it out because he's a kid, he don't know better, and he just blocks it out, and now things are just coming to a head. So like it's there, like the Borg stuff is there, like I see the pieces. I hope it's not that. I hope it's something. I hope it's a deep cut. I hope it's like something that goes.
What would you want it to be then? Because I feel like a proper send off this season would be ending with the Borg, but that's just me.
I'm with you, Myrriah. Paul, yeah, what do you want to see?
I want to see Peanut Hamper, as everyone does.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that is the only other logical way for that to happen, is for it to be Peanut Hamper time.
I will say this about that.
About Peanut Hamper? Yes, please.
Yes. If this is a Peanut Hamper reference, it is the biggest.
It would never be, because people would be so angry.
It's such a an inside joke. You almost have to laugh. Like you almost have to enjoy it. Be like, man, you can't.
Myrriah was right.
Do you know how this would end up actually being a Peanut Hamper thing? We would never see Peanut Hamper on this show, but we would get some sort of backstory next season or two on Lower Decks about like, oh yeah, do you remember when Peanut Hamper was hanging out with that Vatic person? It would be something like that.
It'd be cool. Or what I would also accept is like, it's whatever, and then all of a sudden, like, Arch appears, and then like Tom Paris walks out. I go like, Doctor, that was a pretty good holonovel. I really like that.
Oh man, people would be so angry. Like the anger would be so bad.
That was really good. Like you've got, this is. I think this is your best one yet.
See, that's the thing. Like I would like, I am not necessarily a writer, but I think the hardest challenge is to write the last 2 episodes of this show, because truth is, no matter what you're gonna do, no matter what you do, you're gonna get crushed. Like the crushing is coming, because Star Trek fans.
I mean, like Lost landed perfectly, right? Like there's no
Did
one's ever
Grant
been upset
just
with.
enter the chat again?
I, I mean, like, I don't know. Like, Myrriah, you're a Voyager fan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a TNG fan. Can you honestly say when you watch those episodes, the finale left you with this place of like, that was perfect?
Yes, Voyager finale was great.
The Voyager finale is
So
great.
like old Janeway and like present Janeway,
Yeah.
Admiral Janeway, like that is hot.
It was a good one.
It's pretty good.
I'm not gonna lie, Deep Space Nine landed well too.
Yeah.
Really? TNG, I felt like was just okay.
Well,
you didn't like the near destruction of the universe because of Picard going,
I mean, but they got the movies. I feel like are the movies really the better tie-up for TNG?
Well, Star Trek 10, so we don't talk about that.
But yeah, I mean, Terry Matalas has written the last 2 episodes of the season. He is our showrunner. And the last 2 are entitled Vox, and then The Last Generation is our finale episode.
I still feel like there's a lot of stuff to tie up in 2 episodes.
Truly.
Like what else? What else? Find out who the guy.
We have a whole.
We got all Frontier Day. I mean, what?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, I keep forgetting. They've like done a good job of reminding us that Frontier Day is like on the horizon, but like the ticking clock, I have no idea where we are in the time frame, because it felt like it was supposed to be like 2 hours from when the first episode started. Like, that was like the ruse was like, oh, we're coming on board to check this ship on the way to go to Frontier Day.
One thing that I didn't like about the episode is like when they get pushed into the room, everyone, and then like Seven doesn't go into the room, and like Shaw goes, "What are you doing? Accepting the consequences of what?" She just stood there. She didn't do. And what was going to happen?
They were referring to, so Shaw was upset that she didn't blow the turbo lift.
I get it.
Right.
But what was she supposed to do? What was she going to do by staying out there?
I think she wanted to keep Jack safe. I think that was more than anything. She was like, she's like, I can trust that Shaw is going to watch the rest of this crew. I need to trust and watch and make sure nothing happens to Jack.
That's a stretch. That's a stretch.
But
anyway,
we'll see. We shall see. I'm trying to think if there's other things I thought were great in this episode. Rafi being like, "Hey, fellas," and then just having a full-on kick-ass time going down the hallway, taking out minions. I thought was great. Her and Worf are again fantastic. I did love the old school cloaking on the ship. When it went into cloak, it looked like the bird of prey cloaking. I was like, oh, I love that they did it like that way. It looks so nostalgic and fun. And I guess Rafi and Worf had also grabbed some bird of prey tech to use on their shuttle as well. But we all know, I have no doubt Worf could figure that out. So.
Oh, I just assumed that they just transferred the cloaking device to the shuttle.
The shuttle. Oh, and then brought it back onto the ship.
I mean, they have Jody there, so he would know how to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
Any thoughts about new Data?
I mean, it'll be interesting to see how he functions in like a pretty much as close to human as possible body, right? Like this is the first time Data truly gets to feel human. So I think I'll be most interested in how he functions in more emotional situations.
I think it'll be fine. I mean, I think, like it'd be like saying, like how it'd be to see a more human, emotive Spock.
No, I think the difference is Data has always been largely invincible, right? He's been a bit of a superhero because he's super strong. If you were to cut him, he's annoyed, but he doesn't necessarily feel pain. Like this is going to be a new world for him. Like he's vulnerable, right? His body is synthetic, but it's he can die. Like he can truly die again. And so I think that changes it. The fear of death or harm changes a person.
Mhm.
No, sure. So he's gonna be a baby. That's what you're saying. Great. I hear you. Feelings make you babies. Clyde Haynes, everyone.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying don't
Nicole,
be scared, Data. Don't be scared.
don't be scared. Nicole asks, since the other ship was blown up, Vedek's ship, does that mean the weapon was blown up? Well, they dropped the weapon in
Like,
random space by the nebula before they kept going.
so assuming the space squids didn't blow it up, it's still floating out there. So
yeah,
you want
so
to go pick it up?
Peanut Hamper has it.
Has portal a peanut hamper with portal technology that would rock.
Scary.
That would rock. I'm not gonna lie. You know,
It's gonna be
Peanut
great.
has all. Yep.
It's gonna be great once Mike McMahon and all of the lower decks crew get a hold of all of this.
Yeah, that's right. They go like, oh, like let's put together just like Voltron.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that was it for my thoughts and questions of this episode. Did y'all have anything else you wanted to discuss?
Yeah, I know. Like I'm excited about the two. Like I think
Yeah.
I think they can wrap it up. I don't think it needs to be like all they have to do is just like beat the big bad. Oh, the big bad is this person. A big bag of monologue.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then we keep on, and then they go like, hey,
Here's the baton. We're passing it along.
like, can we agree, or can we discuss, or whatever, that Beverly and Picard probably aren't going to hook up? They're not going to get together.
No, I hope the last scene of this series is Picard walking into that bar to finally see Laris.
See, yeah, that's yeah, because she's the one.
Yeah, that's my hope.
Even Clyde agrees now.
Well, I've always been a Laris fan from day one. You know, I'm day one Laris.
Like, but was it me? Am I going crazy? Because I feel like I was the only one saying this. You get like, oh, Beverly's here now. Blah 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 blah. They have a kid.
No, the difference is I am a Laris fan. Whether or not I believe that he's gonna make it to Laris is a different conversation. I think Picard could die. We talked about this before, Myrriah, where Picard ultimately sacrifices himself for everyone else, and finito. I question whether or not he will actually physically make it back to Laris, but like the Picard and Beverly thing has not worked, right? And listen, I'm a pretty forgiving dude, but she didn't tell him he had a son for all a bunch of great reasons, but I don't know that you could truly come back from that. Like, that's a pretty significant breaking of trust. So sure. Definitely Team Laris.
Carolyn asked an interesting question, and says, what about both Beverly and Troy manipulating their sons' fathers about their sons? Seems like shortchanging and reductive writing for key women. I mean, I will say in general, I felt that a lot of the women on this series this season have not been given a ton of wonderful emotional development nor usage. I feel like we've gotten a lot of cool kick-ass moments, which I love. Great. But yeah, I would agree that it's like it's an interesting point. It's interesting to see how pushed to the sidelines a lot of the women have been put this season, and you know, I'm waiting until it ends to give my full diagnosis and thoughts. That's how I'm feeling.
Right, I agree with you.
It's also a packed cast. It's packed. It's a big ensemble. Big.
My question is, aside from perhaps Data, has anyone gotten any development really?
I feel like Worf has had some really interesting character development moments.
Like in the series or off screen?
They have been all off screen. You are correct, Paul. You are correct.
Riker has had some development on screen. Like we've seen him. I think
Shaw has had quite a few.
Yeah.
Shaw's just been right. That's all he's been.
But I
think he's been challenged a bit.
He's been challenged. We've gotten some big emotional speeches from Shaw. We've gotten to know Jack on some levels. You know, Like
I said, I don't disagree with you. I just feel that.
What about Sydney? I feel like we got a little bit of Sydney and her father, the
We've
dynamic between
gotten-
her and
But it's
Yeah.
again tied to a man. Does this series thus far? I'd have to go back and see if this passes the Bechdel test.
it does not. I do not think it passes the
Like,
Bechdel test.
yeah, no, like, it is this thing where I'm like, yeah, like I watch it all and I go like, everyone's pretty messy here.
Yeah,
But,
I'm waiting till it fully ends to see how everything lands before I give my final verdict. But it has seemed very like I'm giving you a hug and telling you how much I have missed you, and now I'm gonna maybe give you a few lines of techno babble from time to time. I think I was mostly like we got introduced to Beverly in such a like interesting and like bananas way at the beginning, only then to put her in an ice box for like an episode and a half.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah.
But to be fair, Vedic, like she's a fully developed character that's pretty kick-ass.
That's true. That is true.
Well,
but she's a changeling, so
yeah. Now again, it was attached to a man, but I thought the conversation between Beverly and Picard in like episode
2 or 3.
Yeah, whenever they
Two
finally
weeks
de-thawed Beverly, I thought that was a really emotional moment. I felt like it was a little too quick, but it had the beginning of something. I thought we were going to get more of that because this is a weighty conversation. Like, you've hidden him and now he's in danger. Like, but it was mainly a lot of Jack and Picard talking, and like. It's interesting because it was kind of like, well, shouldn't you guys kind of sort of be having this conversation with Beverly? Like, should she be available
or at least
fill in some of the blanks? Like,
yeah, I wish I got to see more Jack Beverly relationship structure. I feel like we haven't gotten very much of that at all, if any, really.
Yeah, it's been this kind of, I don't know, this cliched mom-son like relationship, like this protective mom. That's all we see is Beverly as the worried protective mom, and it's not nuanced at all.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm giving it till the end to see how everyone kind of gets wrapped up. As far as Troy and Riker are concerned, I feel like that they have such a deeper history that we are all like more aware of, that it feels a little bit different. And I also don't think she was manipulating, as far as like, at least from what we heard in that limited jail cell conversation, of what we can kind of get from is that they've been dealing with a lot of emotional stress, and she was trying her best to help him in some way, and while it wasn't the correct way to help him, I don't think it was manipulation in the same sense.
I will say one thing that was funny to me is when she says, when he goes Imzadi, and she's like, you know what, I really wish I had taught you a different Beta Z word, because real talk, like pretty much for the last 30 years there's only one betazoid word that people know that Riker ever says, and that's it. And you would actually think that being married to a betazoid, he would have other greater dialect, right?
Yeah.
Like there are other words that he would say. His vocabulary for her would be much more evolved, and it isn't. And so I thought that was a pretty funny nod to fan service. But
yeah, it was interesting.
Sounds to me like Riker is not a great husband. I'm just saying, he might be a good guy. I'm just sounds to me like he's like like doesn't learn his wife's culture at all. At all? They were dating for like 7. We watched them date for 7 years.
I mean, look, listen. I think I'm a fan of Riker, and look, if you've got to be either good in bed or bad at pizza, I'm going with being good in bed. We can order.
Yeah.
So, Team Riker.
Oh man. All right. Well, yeah, TBD on my final thoughts and feelings on that discussion, but I am aware and paying attention. I'm just being very generous in letting it ride till the end.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, because I'm just like, y'all put up some scenes that I find incredibly boring that I would have swapped out for some like, some conversation between Seven and Rafi, but that's just me, or a conversation between Seven and Jack that is more profound than let's look through some ships, but
But even though
which
that
I
gave you-
enjoyed. I liked
Exactly.
the ship
That's
thing,
right.
but it
That's
could have
right.
had some like extra layers to it, you know, like a little lasagna time.
Lasagna time. Very good.
I could have done with a little bit more of Sydney and her sister conversation too.
That too.
Like that relationship, just like we got like a little bitty tea, you know, and I'm like, that would have been interesting. They seem so different. Like
Do they though?
that. I mean, yes, to me they seem different. I'm like, look, if you're trying to launch a spinoff, that is give me some of that.
The LaForge
right?
sisters in space.
Yeah, like who doesn't love sibling dynamics? Like, come on.
Siblings don't like sibling dynamics.
Yeah.
But we like it watching it on TV.
Lore,
so then we can be like,
Data. Come on, Clyde. Like this.
It was, and that was great television.
Yeah,
right?
fair. That's fair. Absolutely fair.
Yeah. All right, guys. I think that's it for my thoughts. Anything else from y'all?
I think I'm good.
I'm
Ready
good.
to sign off.
Alrighty. Thank you all so much for watching again or listening this week. We appreciate it. We'll be back next week to talk episode 9, Vox. We will confirm if my crazy theory is correct. You can subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on Apple. You can also find links to everywhere you can get this at StarTrekPod.co. You can also find links to our Patreon if you would like to join us there. Clyde, where can people find us on Twitter?
You can find us at Star Trek Pod. Come on. And thank you to Karen, who runs our Twitter. What's up, Karen? Appreciate you.
We appreciate you. Thank you all so much. Live long and prosper. Bye-bye.
Bye.